Over there at Epic Universe, they have Dark Universe, and over at Disney, they say they're getting a Villain's Land. By the way, a Villain's Land that Josh D'Amaro said that dirt was already moving, and at D23 in Brazil, they said they're getting ready to break ground. So enough to break your brain there on who the villain might be here. Let's talk about the Villain's Land, who's making the cut, and who won't be there, here on That Park Place.
The villains have been revealed for the new Villains Land, coming after the Cars retheme of Rivers of America. And guess what? We have them on screen right now. Wait a minute. That's not the villains.
Yes, it is.
What is going on there?
Chapek doing in there?
Yeah, what is Chapek doing in there? Make it central. Explain yourself.
He's like Iago. He's like the henchman to the villains that like you want to cheer for, and like ultimately becomes a good guy after the fact.
Right? Yes. I like the bearded Bob Chapek. I thought that was a good look for him, and he was really starting to really come into his own, especially after Bob Iger stepped back just a little bit. But alas, Bob Iger is back, and he's bringing his villains with him. Disney World reveals 13 villains set for Twisted Villains Land. Dark new details may not be happily ever after this by Entertainment Weekly. Joey Nolft here, November 9th, 2024. Their evil ambitions, this is from Josh D'Amaro, gives us endless possibilities to tell new stories. This new land will be home to the villains that you know and loathe. D'Amaro told attendees while standing in front of an image that showed portraits of the 13 characters from Disney films, including the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, Jafar from Aladdin, Lady Tremaine, Cinderella, Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove, Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, Captain Hook, Peter Pan, Gaston, Beauty and the Beast, Mother Gothel, Tangled, Ursula the Little Mermaid, Hades from Hercules, Chernobog from Fantasia, and both versions of Evil Queens, that being from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Evil Queen herself, and Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. We also have an image here of the cast of characters featured. You can kind of see that right there. Do you notice?
I like that Yzma is there.
Yes. I do like some of these rare characters.
I do notice one notable exception.
Who's that there, Marvin?
That would be Dr. Facilier, the Shadow Man.
What? No, he's got to be here. He's got to be somewhere.
I can't help but notice there's no villains of color on here, and he would have added some much needed diversity to this lineup.
I mean, Jafar as a different kind of take on. Yeah, there's a different color there.
And isn't Yzma South American? But that's interesting.
Guys, there's only you know how this works. There's only one diversity that matters.
I know, and this is why I'm surprised, Marvin, that one diversity that matters there is not represented here. I don't
know. Hey, look, they can all put on like appliances or rainbow garb and be fine.
Well, but that's the other thing is that they, Disney does not like to, they don't like to make, people of color or people in the LGBT community villains. So, we can't have that. They've all got to be super white.
That's a fair point, actually. I will say, it's an interesting cast of characters that you have featured here. So much so that they've actually featured one of the characters twice, that being Maleficent, in both her human-ish form and her dragon form there. That's good stuff. I like how Chernobog's featured. That's a great addition right there. I believe the first version of concept art maybe alluded to Chernobog being featured here. Maleficent dragon, you got to have that. But that's really interesting how Dr. Facilier, this really notable character associated with this franchise that they're pumping up in all kinds of places. Culture, I don't know if you saw this story, Marvin. They're doing an $800 dinner package at the top of the Contemporary in California Grill for New Year's Eve to dine with Tiana. That's what the whole thing is about. $800 per person for this dinner package. This is a character that they're featuring. She's basically taken over all of New Orleans Square. She's taken over both versions of Splash Mountain. She might take over a third. They're pushing this character wherever they possibly can.
She's also
not featured here.
She has also taken over the Port Orleans Resort. I just stayed at Port Orleans Riverside recently, and she's everywhere.
Oh, I'm I'm sure she is. But that's what's really interesting. Oh, yes. Yeah. $800 ahead. That's right, chat.
Well,
it's crazy.
Vash, we know that Dr. Facilier was kept out of Tiana's Bayou adventure because they have decided that voodoo is not something that they can feature. Now, when that happened, people were like, "Oh, it's because they're adhering to those crazy Christians. They don't want to see voodoo." No, they're not doing that. They're doing that because they don't want to offend voodoo people.
Right. It's
practitioners of voodoo,
and that's actually why that attraction is kind of mediocre or mid. Right, because it doesn't have any of those thrill elements. It doesn't have a villain that is threatening your life or causing any calamity or drama for that attraction. It's just kind of, hey, get you on over to the party.
Yeah, but
that's really boring.
May I point out, they were also like, oh, well, it's some people's actual religious beliefs, so we don't want to actually do it. You have Hades in there.
That's very true.
There are Greek pagans that still believe in the Greek gods.
That's a fair point. So we're not going to worry about upsetting those people. We're not going to worry about upsetting just about anybody on this list that maybe somebody has a problem with. It's only the one demo, the one group that we don't necessarily want to offend. The picking and choosing of this has been really disastrous for the company. It's been awful for attractions all over the world, including Tiana's Bayou Adventure, obviously. And it's really sad to see. But
you know what? Bill S. Preston Esquire in the chat just nailed it. He said they're not worried about the handful of voodoo practitioners. They're worried about activists claiming that it's racist, and he's 100% right on that.
Yes, I would say that's a fair point. We saw
like they made Mama Odie. Mama Odie went from being the voodoo priestess of the swamp to being a bayou fairy godmother.
Right. Exactly. A lot of people questioned whether or not they left Dr. Facilier out for religious reasons or for these other reasons. And it was like, no. They left him out because they didn't want to feature voodoo specifically. This is why we're not seeing him really in the marketing materials associated with Mickey's Not So Scary or Oogie Boogie Bash. This is why he's not featured here prominently in this villains lineup. You would think that Dr. Facilier would be an instant hit with a lot of people looking for villains type characters, and yet he's not featured here. Why is this all happening? Because they don't want to feature voodoo. They do not want to have this segment of their past represented in any way going forward, and it's a real shame. It's a real tragedy. Amazing voice, amazing personality, and yet we can't feature him in villains iconography going forward. He's still
in the Hocus Pocus show in Not So Scary, so we'll see if that continues.
But for how long, Marvin? But for how long? That's the question.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.